We have to inspire ourselves with beauty, art, nature, being with those we love, doing what brings us alive. That is a practice that we can do in 5 minutes every single day. And that is enough to top off your willingness tank and also do more creative work as a result.
Introducing The Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hey there, just popping in quickly. It's April Roberts, and I wanted to thank you for being a loyal listener of the Vixen Voice. It means so much to me. And because of that, we're going to be popping in these little announcements because I want you to be the first to know what's going on at the Vixen Gathering. So if you haven't done so yet, click the link below and check out the Vixen Founders Collective. The members who are already in are raving, and we would love to have you join us in the ultimate business consulting, networking, and personal growth community for Gen X female founders. See you there. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Vixen Voice. Today is going to be fun. Here's how I know that. You have 3 fiery brunettes on with you. We are talking about play and creativity in entrepreneurship, so how can that not be fun? And all 3 of us are coaches, and you know what that means? We've learned to not take ourselves too seriously. So we're going to be talking about all these things and more today. I'm excited to welcome Susie deVille for the first time to the Vixen Voice. Susie is the founder and CEO of the Innovation and Creativity Institute since 2006. But here's the cool thing. She's been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. And not only is she a business coach, but she's also an author and an artist. What a cool combo, right? And she has an amazing book, Buoyant, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Becoming Wildly Successful, Creative, and our favorite word, free. So we'll talk about all these things today. And then Amanda Kauffman is the founder of the Coaches Plaza. You've probably heard her on before. She is a very dear friend of mine that I met in Dean Graziosi's mastermind. So you make friends everywhere. I met Susie on LinkedIn, and she just seemed really cool. So we hopped on a networking call, and in fact our call spurred today's topic because I really love what she does. So Susie, thank you for the inspiration for today's topic, and Amanda, thank you for being a good sport to hop on. So where we want to start is getting to know Susie a little better. Susie, I always like to say we women are very multifaceted gems, and you know, we're all different types of gems in the way we present ourselves and how we've been formed. So I'd love to hear your journey, or maybe a pivotal story in your life that created, you know, this amazing multi-dimensional woman that we have joining us here today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I think it's best if I start with my nuclear winter period.
Okay, that sounds good.
That tends to sort of crack the nut of all the things that I have done since 2008. So I have been a licensed real estate agent since 2001. And my then husband and I also had a contractor's enterprise. So in 2008, you can probably imagine that both of those industries were decimated. And that sort of ignited this sort of firestorm in my life, which resulted in the sort of end of my marriage, the destruction of my household. Finances went poof. My health was really compromised. And I was in such a mess, such a series of messes, actually, that I thought, well, I think I'll just have to dive in and do what I know that works, has always worked for me, which is to work extremely hard. because I believed the lie that in order to have success and freedom, I would have to work more, have more productivity, and much more discipline. So I thought, well, I'll just 10x or 100x that plan. Well, of course, that's not going to work. I found out pretty quickly that I was not going to have any traction in pulling myself out of any of the calamities that I was in. So I had to actually completely redo, revise, stop one way of living and being, and create an entirely new path. So I started with just having much more rest and spaciousness, and then I started adding in some practices. But when I sort of came across this idea that creativity had a component to this path out of hell, but I didn't quite know what it was. So I launched into this journey, taking all of the research that I had done since 2005 on innovation and creativity. But then I took that sort of theoretical piece and married it with my own experience, discovering myself as an artist. And if you had said this to me in 2008, hey, Susie, by the way, your path out of this to financial freedom, to more joy than you've ever known in your life, to the best health that you've ever been in, is to tap into your innate creativity, I would have laughed you out of the room. So that's how I got to where I am doing the work I am doing today.
I love it. And it's so important to touch on this point because I think a lot of us were raised similarly. I remember being like in the 8th grade and like my two best friends were in the grade below me that lived in my neighborhood. And, you know, we were like the gifted students and the principal took us to some special thing. And he was like, what do you all want to be when you grow up? And of course, one of them wanted to be a doctor and one wanted to be a CPA. And he asked me and I was like, I want to be a writer. And, you know, the answer you always got was like this look like you're too smart to be a writer, which is crazy because it takes crazy intelligence to be a good writer. Right. So I love, you know, when you said this new path, the new path is hard to do because I was faced with that fork in the road when I moved to Italy and found myself a glorified housewife with no children. And I suddenly became like the best Italian cook I could because my A-type personality needed this energy to go somewhere, right? But I mean, had I been at a point in my life at that point, I was too young, I think 27, what a beautiful life I could have had embracing that, right? And living that life and really experiencing it. So like, thank you for sharing your brave journey because I'm certain as everyone was listening like me, it's just like, wow, yeah, we know how hard it is to choose that new path, right? And the beautiful thing is because you were courageous enough to do it, that's now how you serve your clients and you get to spread that joy to everyone else. So I love it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, April, about kind of that typecasting that we all sort of experience as we're growing up, that people are, you know, they have expectations, they have their own experiences, so then they project that forward. And I loved your description as a nuclear winter. You know, that was awesome. I relate. But, you know, it was funny because when I was growing up, I was very much like the performer. You know, I still remember my parents got the camcorder and I was like, Mommy, look at this. Okay, now watch this. And I'd be doing, you know, I'm Little Teapot or any little song or dance that I could come up with. And I was very performative. But over the years, again, you know, I got good grades too. And I liked science and I liked math. But I was one of 4 kids and I was the science kid. Right. So when my birthday came around, I got the microscope. Right. And it was like,
nephew.
Right. I think sometimes like people kind of see an aspect of us that they like and then they reinforce that, or they see an aspect of us that they are concerned about. And then they're like, maybe do less of that. And I think so much of the work is discovering, well, who are you really, you know, without all those influences.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel, you know, Susie, you've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. I've been one for 16. Amanda, I'm now forgetting, but I know you've had a good run too. And I feel like
8 years.
8 years. Yeah. So we have a whole range here. And I feel like when you become an entrepreneur, one of the most important keys to success is becoming a student of yourself. Like you said, who are you really? Where do your talents really, like your talents and your skills are different things, right? And then what gives you energy and what takes energy from you so that we can be, smart about this. Like right now I'm handling invoicing, which no big deal. It's fast, it's easy, but I hopped on and like I was distracted when Susie got on. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was trying to figure out, these people want me to get in their system so we can get paid, right? And like, fine, like it's easy and I can do it, but it's distracting me from my true purpose of what I should be doing, which is here with y'all. So I was like, okay, need to get on new hire, like mental note, get on new hire because, can I do it? Yeah. Is it easy to do? Yeah. Can I probably do it faster than somebody I would hire? Probably. But at the end of the day, it's distracting me from my real work I should be doing. And I think it's so important. So
good.
I would love to dig in with y'all. So, Susie, again, I'm going to ask you to lead the way because this is what you do on a daily basis. But if anyone knows Amanda, like if you see her content, if you interact with her, I mean, she still is the performer today just because you're a fun personality, right? And I see you building fun into your business too. But, Susie, why? My first question is obviously, you get paid to do what you do for a reason. And I feel it's that most of us take ourselves way too seriously. So like, do you feel like when your clients first come to you, do they come to you knowing they need more fun and creativity and wanting it? Or do they not know what the problem is and you insert that in?
It's so funny because I'm, of course, attracting earlier iterations of myself.
Yes.
So I get people who have been entrepreneurs for 5 years plus, and they've had great success, and they're now at some sort of a transition point or inflection point, and they don't quite know what's going on in the enterprise. It's not as financially successful. They're not as excited about it. They seem to be kind of white knuckling all of their work. Color has drained from all of the other aspects of their life, and they're just sort of in a funk. But what they come to me and ask for is scaling their enterprise. So it's really funny because when we don't know the path out and we don't know how we got into the path that we're on, we just think, well, more money's good. So it's really interesting. I mean, I just worked with a very successful female entrepreneur who's 48 years old, and she came to me, wanted to scale her enterprise. We got together for our first session, and I had already read through her entire questionnaire. So I had a very solid, deep background on her and what her situation is. But what was so fascinating was when I handed her a bag of beautiful creativity supplies, she just about clocked me over the head with it because she was like, wait a minute here. That artsy craftsy stuff is for people who are retired or for kids,
right,
people who have time to kill, but it's not for hard charging entrepreneurs. And by the way, I'm busy. I got stuff to do. But I said, this is the way out. And I know you don't believe me because we're trained to believe that it has to be hard, that it has to involve some kind of notion of overachieving, some kind of notion of we have to control things more and hoover out all of the fun and all of the play. Mm-hmm. And people who have been in entrepreneurship for 5+ years, they probably already have stopped doing what they used to love to do because life got busy with either the enterprise or family or whatever. So I'm bringing all of that back online with my clients, and in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they all of a sudden are understanding and feeling that there's a new energetic sheriff in town, and now they're a believer. And that's when we can really just take off.
Yeah, there's so much. I'm going to invite Amanda to speak first because I have so many responses to what you just said. So, Amanda, hop in here.
Oh my gosh, just like thinking about the typecasting, and that's really kind of a perpetuation of it, isn't it? When you have the entrepreneur who's worky. I believe in hard work. Like, I think that hard work is really, really not just important, but it is vital to your success. And I couldn't agree more about, if your energy is way out of alignment, then you're not going to do the necessary things. And one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had in my business was actually bringing the creativity, not as something that I did on the side, but like right actually in it. One of the challenges that I was having was so I help coaches they're building their businesses, right? And I noticed that a lot of coaches are kind of course junkies and they would just like buy course after course after course after course. And when I interviewed them about that, they're like, oh, well, I can't get started with your help and your coaching because I've got to finish this, and this. And I noticed, I was like, well, why aren't you finishing it? Right? And they didn't in as many words say, well, because it's boring. So the breakthrough that I had was, I happened to be in another mastermind and I met a fellow who was a animator for Disney, when they drew stuff by hand. And we just hit it off and we were having a great time. And at the time I was still very typecast in the role of like hard driving, scientifically minded, process driven entrepreneur. I'm a chemical engineer by training. Like, my goodness, I enjoy art, but I never really thought of myself as being creative. And he turned to me, he looked at me, he's like, Amanda, you're so creative. And I was like, what? And just like thinking about it for a hot second, I'm like, wait, that's actually really true. Like, I bring creativity in all kinds of different ways, but I found myself like suppressing it because I felt like there was this presentation that the world was sort of expecting, that everything was going to be bop, bop, bop. And this is what is more professional. So out came the red lipstick. I got the red Gucci glasses. I started getting more expressive, but the really big breakthrough was I threw out a program that I quite literally had invested $150,000 in developing, marketing, trying to get it off the ground. I threw it out and I started all over. But this time I took the same curriculum and I turned it into a game. And I helped coaches basically say, you are not your business. Here's an avatar that you're going to play through the game of my course curriculum, and you earn points as you go, and you can use the points at the honey store, and there's like adventure and consequence, and there's all this stuff in there that is just way off the path. And I had the highest success I had seen in my clients to date, and they still love that program, and it's full of cartoons. It's awesome.
I love it. I'd love to hear more about that. Yeah, there's so much going on here. So a couple of themes I hear. First is like, you shared, Susie, your client, you gave her the bundle of creativity and she wanted to hit you over the head with it. Like, so often our clients don't really know what they need, which is one, a challenge in marketing and onboarding new clients. But two, I had a client reach out to me today like, hey, I love you so much, but I'm not sure like this membership is exactly what I wanted. I'm looking for something more technical. And I'm like, what the heck do you mean by that? Right? So I'm like, hey, look, I'm going to pause your payment, hop on a call with me. I'd like some clarity. If nothing else, I'd like feedback so, we can bring the right people into the program. And she was like, oh my gosh, see, that's what I mean. Like, you're so kind. And I'm like, no, I just believe in bringing value. And if you don't feel we're bringing value, I want to hear why, right? And I want you to feel like you got value. But I actually know she needs the program. She's just too early in her coaching, in her entrepreneurial journey to know this, right? So it's this like, you don't want to preach to people, but it's like this catch-22 of how to deal with that situation. Because I mean, Amanda, you're a certified high performance coach, and we're going through the high performance curriculum that Olympians take, that Oprah Winfrey's been through, that I've had people double revenue in 12 weeks. I've had someone triple their revenue in 2 months. So like, it's like, I know this stuff works for the goal you want. And so I want to hear what technical aspects like they feel needs to be there, because I mean, maybe I need a digital course on the side, right? So I'm open-minded about this. But I also understand that often our clients don't know what they need yet. And it's like, how do we show up and serve them when that's the case, right? And, you know, especially like, I mean, I really care about my clients. I want them to succeed. It's not just that I want them to stay in my program, but it's like, okay, I want you to succeed and reach your goals. So, like, how do y'all deal with this situation when it comes up?
Yeah. I find, well, here's the thing. There's a side of me that's very people pleasy. So when somebody says to me like, oh, you're missing XYZ and I think that I need that, you know, my first impulse is very much like, oh no, you know, like I've missed something, you know, it wasn't what you expected. And, you know, I think especially when I started doing something really weird with my group coaching program that does the lead gen, I was really concerned that these are adults, and these adults that are in their 50s and 60s often won't resonate with bees and bears and mountain climbs and things like that, because it had like a very kind of a Yogi Bear sort of a feel to it. And so I think like receiving the feedback is super helpful, but also being laser clear about, well, what is the outcome that we are working on together, and just confirming like, hey, so I know you signed up for the program with these goals in mind, and we talked about how this solution was going to support those goals. What's changed? What's new? Right? Because what I have also found over time is that even if we've done a good job, like, you know, marketing, selling, confirming, onboarding, and there's lots of like smiles and exchange going on. The thing is like the average American is spending 4.5 hours a day on social media, and a significant portion of that time is going to be spent like looking at ads, looking at other things that are doing basically the same job that we are. So we don't know what additional inputs they've had, you know, even since the last time that we have spoken. And sometimes things like do change, like they've been convinced that there is a new priority, just the same way that they were convinced that our thing was a priority. So then the question becomes like, is there a reconciliation here that makes sense, so that you can honor what you said you wanted and the new thing that you're looking for?
Yeah, I love it. But I mean, I'm sure we see it a lot as we go through coaching. So thank you. Susie, let's dig more into the play. So as your program, and Amanda too, please share with us. I love this gamification. I want to get nerdy and find out more about it. Like, was it an app? Was it online? Like, is it through Circle? How did you do this? Right? Like, how was this done? And how do we have fun? So what I'd love to hear from both of you is, what change did you see in your clients? And Susie, I know it's pretty much what you're about, right? Bringing this in for them and changing their mindset. And Amanda, you brought it in through elements of your coaching. So how did you see, I want to use the term, your clients blossom from the play and creativity being brought in?
So I love helping people really get clear on all the things that are draining their energy, and starting to understand that protecting and healing their energy is priority job number one, and to really start to get great at understanding the expectations of others versus who they truly are, and to start to dig a moat and protect themselves, and to stay inside their boundaries of what is definitely a hell yes for them. So when people start to work with me, whether it's in a group program or a master class or one-on-one, what happens is that they feel so they have so much trust for me, and they feel so comfortable that they're willing to go to the next step with me. They never feel like I'm just sort of leaving them in the dust, because I certainly remember what it's like to be on an emotional or financial gurney. And so I'm going to keep that person right next to me, and they need to feel that sort of sense of not only connection, but sort of stewardship and protection, because they're being very raw and very vulnerable in what they're sharing, and we go deep, and we go deep quickly. But what happens as a result is that people start to stand up for their soul, not only with other people, but with themselves. So now they're much more in alignment with who they truly are, and they're much more clear about what they're willing to do and what is just a hard no, what they're going to loud quit. So what happens in their businesses, of course, is now they're so connected to themselves, the market can hear them and see them because it's a resonant message that lands. And we tend to believe, oh, I'm going to have to dance in my kitchen or whatever to get attention. No, all you have to do is do the work to sort of go on an archaeological dig of the self to surface that true self and connect back with it and share that. So you are the magical marketing elixir, not all the things that we're taught that we have to do that we don't connect with, that we don't resonate with. But if we stay in what we love, then everyone sort of stands up and pays attention to that because it's so rare to see it in action.
100%. So we're going somewhere a little different, but I love that Susie is touching on leads and marketing and, infusing yourself. And Amanda, I know that's what part of your focus is with your clients. Like, hey, how do we generate leads? How do we build your coaching business? So what do you have to add or what's your response to what Susie just shared? Because I thought it was I love that she said, stand up for their soul, because I'm like 1000% about that. Love it.
I am 1000% with you. I totally agree. Like, especially we chose entrepreneurship for a reason. Like as somebody who can be successful as an entrepreneur could be successful probably operating at 20% inside of a large organization, to be very frank about it, and there's just this like potentiality that you get to access when you are an entrepreneur that to me makes the whole thing like there's challenges, but it's like you'll face those and you'll grow through those. And what was coming up for me was that creativity and play actually played a huge role in moving into group programming and community. Yep. And the reason why it was so critical, so important, is before I changed to gamification, having like leaderboards and storyline and all of this kind of thing, and teaching through the gamification, the notion or the concept that you are not your business, that we're doing these activities and it's fun and it's engaging and it's experimental. And I wove all of that into the game. The consequence of that is when people were reporting inside of the community, oh, I just completed this thing, or I just completed that thing. Like just this morning, I saw a post from a client who's like, oh my gosh, I got to level 3 task A, and all the things are falling into place, and it's so exciting. And to contrast that with my old conventional program outline, which we're all super familiar with, right? You log in, you get the welcome, you have the homework, and you have the worksheets. No one celebrated like that, right? Because there wasn't sort of that tonality and that spirit in it that kind of, I think when you break the rules and the paradigms and you're playing, it allows for people to perform at a much higher level because they're not trying to pre-predict like what that outcome is. It's just like Susie said, you are standing up for your soul, you're standing up for your work, you're hard charging. You don't take it as seriously, but then you actually kind of do because you're doing it versus what a lot of people do, which is they talk serious and they're frowny serious, but being honest, they're probably hiding from the work, and they're probably not following through the way that they possibly could. So yeah. And April, you asked a bit of a question about like how we set the game up and everything. Creativity played a huge role in that. And the software, I actually have it now set up that we profit on the software that we use, but the software that we use, it's $97 a month. Like it's not complicated. There's no Zapier integrations required. But it took creativity to get it to a really cost-effective place.
Yeah, I can imagine. I love that. I love the gamification because I feel like, especially, and again, this might be across, the sexes and genders, but because I work with a lot of women, I deal with a lot of resistance, right? And so mine is like, okay, take a tiny step. And usually they take a tiny step and they run a mile, right? So it's just getting them to take the tiny step. But like so much of it is that. And like the gamification just like eradicates the resistance because it suddenly becomes fun instead of something they have to do. Because I like to say, let's change it to I'm choosing to do this, not I have to do this. Like, watch what you're saying. But the gamification just ups it such another level. So, Susie, I mean, I imagine the creative work you do with your clients does a similar thing, right? Like taking away that resistance, or again, maybe this doesn't make sense to people, but I always say just taking yourself too seriously. Like, come on, just do it. Like, what are they going to do? Spank you and take away your birthday if you fail? Like, I mean, I had a friend who would always say that, like, I don't know. Like one of my secrets to success is I'm like, okay, worst case scenario, what if this happens? My brother saw me kind of freezing up in this business and we're very close just because, new business when I was starting. He was like, you're not yourself. Like, you know how to do this. Let's talk. He goes, worst case scenario, you lose all your money and you're sleeping on my sofa and we have fun. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Cool. Okay, let's go. Like, it's like, really, that's not going to happen. Actually, that has happened. When I was divorced starting my last business, I was sleeping on my sister's sofa and grew it to like multiple seven figures. So like, if that's the worst case scenario, it's not that bad, right? So I like to accept that and go on, but I love this idea of gamification because it just eradicates the need for any of that. So Susie, when you're working with your clients, what is the effect of the creativity in the play? Like, is it that eradicating of resistance, or is that just part of it?
It's a big part of it because let's say that I'm teaching an art class and I have people who have never since childhood picked up a crayon or a paintbrush or tried to do collage or whatever. And they come with all kinds of trepidation and this concern that they're not going to make anything that's any good, which of course is not the point of what we're doing. So the first thing that I do with folks is assure them that you may love what you make, and that's great, but really what we're after is the time that you spend in this just zone of making something. So I have a series of practices that I call the 5 M's, and one of the M's is making something. The key to it is using your hands. And so there's lots of things that you can do. You can sketch, you can doodle, you can make a sauce, you can bake a cake, you can crochet, knit, paint, whatever it is. But 5 minutes is so incredibly transformational because what happens is we approach the blank page or whatever the equivalent thereof is. And there's that resistance, right? All the judgment, all the vulnerability. I don't know what I'm doing. It's not going to be any good. I'm not going to like it. Whose idea was this anyway? Get me out of here, whatever it is. So there's kind of like a membrane between you and the work, you and your creativity. And you pierce it by just getting going with no plan, with just sheer abandon, jumping in. And what happens is the central nervous system gets a beautiful reset. The entire world kind of slips away. We enter into this zone in the brain. I call it tapping into your creativity back channels. And now we're tapping into our intuition, our imagination, our problem-solving skills. But there's also this new sense of ease and calm and flow. And all kinds of things are lighting up in brain centers that we tend to not light up because we love being the traffic cop. We love being in our left strategic mind. And that's great. That's an important part of us. But we tend to not bring the other part of us online. So when it comes online, there is this rush from our soul that's just partying because it never gets a chance to come out and play. And what happens as a result is we find an expression and we find a conduit to a part of us that we had forgotten. And that starts to change. Wait a second. I used to love to sing. I used to love to go to plays. I used to and do XYZ in my business. So now there is this bringing back, and the play part becomes now clearly a strategy to surrender into, and that our left brain tends to go, okay, I'll buy that. I'll see that. I'll give that a check mark. But what's happening is through color and play and experimentation and just getting lost on purpose, there is a switch over inside of us, and there's all kinds of things happening, with neural connections in our brain that take us to an entirely new frontier. It ignites courage, it ignites bold action, it ignites serendipity, and all kinds of things. There's this enormous domino effect of change that happens just by crossing that threshold.
Yeah, and I love how you talked about tapping into a different part of the brain for problem solving, etc. Because one thing that amazes me is when I'm talking to a business owner, an entrepreneur, and they're like, I'm just not that creative. And I'm like, you solve problems every day. It takes creativity to solve problems, right? But we have this certain the view of what creativity is. And most visionaries and most entrepreneurs are immensely creative because they're creating something new through their business. And so I love that you just like turn that up so many notches and basically turn them on fire. Amanda?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, what I was thinking as you said that about the objection, the objection or the resistance of like, well, I'm not that creative. I said the same thing. I'm not that creative. I'm not like that. And it's like personal growth 101, like careful, careful, because it's probably not true. And, I am are the two most important and powerful words in the English language. And I just really recall like the gift that I received of having somebody point out, you are creative. And I went, I am creative. And then it was like all that step forward. And what I was thinking as you brought that up is, nothing else really changed except for the decision that I would allow myself to embody in a more creative way. Yeah. And my real fear wasn't so much that I wasn't creative. It was more so that I would be rejected, that my creativity wouldn't be loved, that, I was still such a people pleaser. I think there's a huge society imperative to have everything be, professional, and like the word professional means mathematical. It's a very masculine word. Like it's a very, and nothing, I love men. I love the masculine. And I think that there's a place for all that structure. I love structure, science, spreadsheets, like hook me up. I love that stuff. But like, can we make the spreadsheet pretty? Right? Like, I feel like that's allowed. And I know for me personally, even just in this moment today, one of the biggest things that I'm really working on is just, channeling all that creativity and allowing that to be attractiveness, and then just grow that. And it's been working gangbusters to just let myself create and do the thing. And like, I am making it for other people to enjoy, but it's like, it's for them to judge. And I'm thinking about that Andy Warhol quote. It's one of my super, super favorites, which is, leave the judgment to the critics, and while they're deciding, make more art.
Love it. Love it. I was giggling as you said that because I think it was algebra 2. I don't remember. It was a math, and it was one of the maths where you had to graph things. And literally in the middle of an exam, the teacher was like, April, can I see you in the hallway? And I'm like, what? Like, I'm taking my exam. And I go out there and she was like, I see that you're like perfectly coloring in the graph. You don't have to do that. That's not part of your grade. And I was like, oh no, for me, it needs to be pretty and look good. So yes, I do have to do that. Like, I literally got pulled down the hallway and I was like, nope, it's important. So like, oh my gosh, that teacher did not understand me at all. I was never rude or disrespectful, but I was like, no, it's important. So I was laughing at that. And I love your quote, and you're so right. Like, you know, some of the most beautiful work we do is when we just do it. Right? Without how is it going to be received? What's going to happen here? And,
girl,
you know,
okay,
that's
my whole thing is do what matters, and I went so far as to tattoo it on my body, and like, and it's with my mom's handwriting, and it was like a whole thing, like talking about the just give yourself permission, man. Like, yeah, just do what matters.
I was just going to point out something that I love from Brene Brown, because it certainly was a part of my past, and it is definitely a part of about 95% of my clients' past. And this is the concept of creativity or art scars, where when we were young and we created something and we showed it to a classmate or a teacher or a parent or a sibling, and then we were ridiculed, we were put down, we were said, ooh, yeah, stick to the spelling, you know, that's more your speed. And I had a situation when I was in art class and I drew a horse. My horse ended up looking like a coffee table. And my buddy who was sitting to my right just burst out laughing. I mean, just thought it was the funniest, ugliest, worst thing she'd ever seen. So I started to believe right then, okay, this world is not for me, number one. Number two, I got the message that art is the ability to create something that looks like something in the real world.
Yes.
And I thought, I don't really have that skill to sketch something in realism. I didn't have the word for it then, but I thought, nah, that's probably not going to be possible for me. So it wasn't until I was in my 40s when I got back into the game and I was like, wait a second, this has nothing to do with, I mean, yes, I could try to sketch something, and I can now sketch something that looks like something in the real world, but I much actually prefer to do things in abstract, to do mixed media. So I think that there's this, we put ourselves in a very limited place because of early experiences, because they were very painful. We certainly don't want to experience anything shameful or being rejected, bringing that forward as adults. But most adults who begin to play around and play and experiment with their creativity in lots of different ways connect back into that part of them that felt most free and most joyful as a child. And it is the most delicious thing on earth to feel it ourselves and then to watch it happen in others.
Yeah. Well, this is where I find the value of children, right? I don't personally have children. I love being around children. Like my youngest nephews and niece are 5, 8, and 9, and I just have so much fun. My sister calls me the entertainer of the year because she found out that my nephew is never on his iPad around. She was like, you can't be on that over there. And I was like, I've never seen him on his iPad. And she's like, what? And he goes, that's because you're so entertaining, Aunt April. And I was like, but I mean, that's when I'm free to be a child. Like, I just behave like a child with them. And, you know, it's so important to like get in touch with that, however it is. I agree with you. I've been in a head down period personally, like trying to get some things done for the business. And yesterday, because I take 30 minutes for lunch, I was fixing my lunch and I found myself dancing around the kitchen. And I was like, okay, I'm out of the tunnel, because obviously I feel fine to dance around the kitchen in the middle of the day. Like, that's how I want to live my life, right? Like, not if someone's expecting something of me right then. But it takes a while to get there. And, you know, you shared the work. What came to me is Sometimes age is a blessing because look, I was the FOMO queen. I was the last one at the party. Like if the party lasted till 6 a.m., I'd go shower and go straight to work. And now like I hit this wall and I'm like, time to go home. And I do that with work too. It comes to me about 4 o'clock in the afternoon because I start early and I'm like, okay, done. Even if I wanted to do 10,000 other things, like my brain shut down and it's time to go to the rest of my life. So I feel like you're bringing that to people maybe sooner than it would come naturally through the use of play and creativity. And I think it's important to be true to yourself and honor it.
Well, and once we get a taste of it, then we're not willing to live any other way.
Yeah, I agree. Well, ladies, this has been amazing. We are like running against time. I can't believe how quickly 45 minutes passes. So I just want to invite you, like, what are some last final thoughts, maybe some tips to share with our listeners? Like, especially what are some things that they could do in their everyday life or their business to insert a little bit more play or creativity?
Well, I would like to invite folks to bring in at least one of what I call the 5 M's, and that's either morning pages, which is the brainchild of Julia Cameron, which is a very brief journaling practice that you can do every day. Meditation, movement, so 5-minute walk, 5-minute meditation. And then one that I think is really fun, which is moments of inspired learning. You can find inspirational quotes. You can listen to poetry. You can read a page out of a book. But what I have noticed since January, I've been putting inspirational quotes into a 5-year journal. And now, as I'm flipping through to get to the next day's entry, I'm seeing all of these and thinking about them. And now they're all starting to cross-pollinate. And those ideas are starting to inform my next book as well as content for my clients. So when we're looking for the exhaling part of the work, which is the creating part, we have to be mindful that we have to breathe in. We have to inspire ourselves with beauty, art, nature, being with those we love, doing what brings us alive. That is a practice that we can do in 5 minutes every single day. And that is enough to top off your willingness tank and also do more creative work as a result.
Love it. Thank you, Susie.
Love it. I was thinking real hard about this one because accessing creativity, I mean, to create, that's really what we're doing as entrepreneurs. We're looking at challenges in the world that are basically we're taking problems other people don't want to solve and we're solving it, right? So creativity is really huge. And for me, I think one of the biggest things that has helped me enhance my creativity in a significant way is be very mindful about consumption. Right. So if it's high quality consumption, like Susie's talking about, of going to an art museum, that is a very, very different thing than sitting there and scrolling on your phone in comparisonitis, you know? So I think like finding things that you admire, find things that you find repulsive, like find things that like expose yourself to things and don't just end up kind of accidentally zombieing yourself into streams of other people's consciousness, you know, like let yourself observe. And then I would say, you know, I got this from Mary Forleo, which is just create before you consume. So that idea of morning pages, for example, is fantastic. You know, I have a lock on my phone that blocks certain like social media and things like that until a certain hour of the day. And so just like doing little things like that to make sure that you're creating and projecting into the world as much as possible, and do it because it's really aligned to you. Don't do it because you're trying to impress a particular person. I think that that's the big things I'd say.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, Amanda, you talked about observing. I would say engage, like observe, but also sometimes engage. Like when you don't, like I went to the farmer's market yesterday and then I got chatting it up with this lady at one of the stands, and she manages a farm nearby and she invited me to come out to the farm and check it out. And I'm like,
holy
so
Toledo.
freaking excited to go to the farm and learn how they're doing things, right? But like, Just engage. I don't know. That's my new thing. Once a day, I'm trying to have a joyful conversation, either with a stranger or someone I love. And like, it really just hearing what other people are doing and what they're bringing to the world, which is part of observing, but engaging in that conversation. Because, that's the power of podcast. As you're all listening to us, you're thinking of ways that you want to go do this, right? Like, we're sharing our stories and our client stories, but at the same time, the listeners are like, ooh, I want to do this and I want to do that. But I think we've become a society of one-way engagement through everything digital.
Bunch
so
of watchers.
Get out there and two-way engage. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And the interactivity is absolutely essential. And I think that's one of the most powerful and cool things about the age that we live in is you really can interact a lot.
You can. I love it. Well, ladies, thank you so much. I'm so sorry we're out of time. Please, if you want to follow these amazing women, all of their contact information, the information about Susie's book, the information about Amanda's gamified program, it will all be in the show notes. And if you have not already, you can find them at vixengathering.com/podcast. And if you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe, because then all these cool resources get delivered to your inbox every Tuesday and Thursday when a new episode drops. So be sure to follow us, follow Susie, follow Amanda, grab Susie's book, and get creative this weekend. I don't care what it is. Cook a meal, paint something, dance across the room, whatever it is. Let's tap into that part of our soul that might feel caged in. So thank you, ladies. This was such an amazing, unbelievable conversation. And for everyone listening, as I always say, the world needs more love. This week, let's focus on how we can be creatively loving. Let's show up in a different way than we normally do and maybe surprise someone. And maybe it's yourself. So, Susie, Amanda, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Talk to you soon. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to today's show notes, including links to all the resources we mentioned, visit vixengathering.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of The Vixen Voice.